Yeah, in recent years, we've seen great changes in medical technology in Western countries. And a lot of these changes have provided very impressive benefits, we think. On the other hand, we also have seen great costs arise. And so we're having a lot of problems, actually, solving problems. And in my view, we have forgotten something in medicine that's very, very important. It really has to do with the foods we eat and the nutrition that we get as a result of those foods.
The majority of Americans are now overweight. The burden of diabetes is on the verge of breaking our medical system. And the single most important thing that we do for our health is what we choose to eat. Our physical activity matters as well, but those lifestyle choices are at the bottom, are at the root of all of the crisis that's facing the developed world right now.
Quasi il 90% delle persone al di sopra di 65 anni prendono quotidianamente una o più medicine, che sono medicine per la pressione alta, medicine per il colesterolo alto, per la glicemia alta o per il diabete, per scoagulare il sangue, senza contare le medicine per il sistema nervoso, i tranquillanti e i sonniferi. Questo è un vantaggio perché queste medicine sono effettivamente efficaci, ma è una sconfitta clamorosa della prevenzione, io direi proprio della medicina, perché tutte queste condizioni sarebbero del tutto prevenibili modificando il nostro stile di vita, perché sono condizioni che sono favorite dal nostro modo di vivere, che è diventato sempre più sedentario e con un'alimentazione sempre più artificiale.
Una volta avevamo un rapporto diretto con la natura, con la terra, con gli animali, dopodiché però le cose sono cambiate, c'è stata la rivoluzione industriale, siamo andati sempre più di corsa, sempre più veloci, al punto da arrivare adesso a un completo distacco tra noi e quello che mangiamo. C'è proprio una separazione, uno spazio, non riusciamo più a separare la merce dal vero cibo, prendiamo condizionati da quello che abbiamo davanti. E quindi siamo entrati in uno schema come se fosse una trappola di una ragnatela, dove quello che stiamo mangiando adesso è veramente dannoso per la salute, ma non lo sappiamo. Pare che non abbiamo scelta, perché in effetti dal nostro punto di vista scelte non le abbiamo, perché non le sappiamo.
We are now getting evidence, a lot of evidence actually, that our consumption of animal-based foods is a problem on many different fronts. Not only does it affect our health in many different ways, it also affects things like the environment. So our focus on trying to consume as much animal protein as we can get has had enormous consequences and created a lot of problems for us for many decades, maybe centuries. As a result, by simply not consuming animal-based foods, not spending so much money and so much resources to produce these foods, we would be able to solve all kinds of problems at the same time. The violence against the animals, of course, along with the environmental problems, along with the cost of health care, all of these problems can be traced to their excessive consumption of animal-based foods. We need to solve that problem.
Il problema della carne è veramente molto grande, non soltanto perché una esagerazione di consumo di carne favorisce lo sviluppo delle malattie croniche di oggi, ma anche perché l'esagerazione del consumo di carne fa male al pianeta.
Already, our consumption of animal products is having such an effect that we're changing the entire planet. If other countries with large populations try doing the same, the effects will be unimaginable. Right now, we're seeing huge increases in consumption of meat and animal products in poorer countries like India and China, and this is simply unsustainable. We are already using 30% of the land surface of the earth to grow animals for food, and 70% of the agricultural land. If they start eating like we do, the effects on global climate would be absolutely disastrous. We'll see huge increases in greenhouse gases and huge changes in our climate.
If India and China started to consume meat the way Western industrial societies do, first thing that would happen is a total devastation of the planet. As it is, just Western societies living on a meat-based diet have caused so much of the destruction of the water, of the forests, of the land, of the atmosphere, and of the animals themselves. And if the more than 2 billion people of India and China were to be pushed in that direction, we would not have food. There would be massive starvation.
Se anche gli africani, gli asiatici, i latinoamericani consumassero la quantità di carne che consumano gli italiani, gli europei o i nordamericani, quali sono attestati a 125 kg di carne all'anno pro capite, non sarebbero sufficienti 5 pianeti. Perché la produzione di carne richiede spazio, richiede un'agricoltura intensiva, richiede produzioni massive.
We're burning down entire rainforests in order to create pasture land and cropland for animals. As we continue to destroy the last of our forests, we'll soon run out. It's simply not sustainable. There is no way to keep this going to the point where the entire world eats like we do in the first world.
The conversion of some of the primeval areas of biodiversity, like the rainforests of Brazil and Costa Rica, for either growing soybean for animal feed or putting animals for intensive feedlots, is a major threat to both the biodiversity at these centers of biodiversity, but also climate change, because these rainforests are the climate stability system. They are the lungs of the planet. They are the livers of the planet. They are what allow recycling of moisture. They create the trade winds. When the rainforests are gone, what we have is a total disruption of the climate stability system and an aggravation of all the instability that greenhouse gases have created.
Raise these forests, we're not only losing a valuable part of our ecosystem, we're also taking away a huge carbon sink, something which sucks the global warming gases out of the atmosphere as part of the natural cycle. And instead we're burning them, releasing all the carbon dioxide that they've sucked back into the air. The air we're breathing now has double the methane it did before industrialization. The UN has said that livestock production is responsible for 18% of our greenhouse gas emissions causing global warming, which by itself is far more than produced by all transportation combined, all the cars, trucks, airplanes, ships combined. Some estimates go far higher, even as high as 51%. They come from the digestive processes of the animals themselves, from the enormous amounts of manure that are created and untreated. It's caused by the huge amounts of fossil fuels needed. It takes more than 10 times as much fossil fuels to create a calorie of animal protein as it does to create a calorie of plant protein. It's hard to imagine when you look at one chicken or one cow that it could be affecting the entire world. But the vast numbers of animals put together are having a dramatic change on the entire global climate.
When you put 100,000 animals in one place, in what are called concentrated animal farm operations, that wealth of the soil turns into a pollutant. It's toxic, it's lethal, and it becomes a source of methane. That methane is a very lethal greenhouse gas.
I mean, I understand that there are, in even the smallest animal factory, it's equivalent in feces and urine waste to a community of 16,000 people. That would be a small town, just in the smallest. They put into the air 160 different gases, some of them quite damaging, like hydrogen sulfide, which can actually do neurological damage to people when they breathe this gas in.
Another very, very big aspect is in the very production of fertilizers which fertilize the grain that feeds the animals. Nitrogen fertilizers are 300 times more deadly than carbon dioxide. The combination of methane, the combination of nitrogen oxides and carbon dioxides contributes to that 18% of the greenhouse gases. But worse, that waste now is not just going into the air. All that waste is being dumped into water bodies. So one of the most serious sources of water pollution has become animal factories.
In order to take the land we have now and even keep it going at the current rate, in spite of all the loss of topsoil and the destruction of the quality of the land, we're increasingly relying upon artificial fertilizers which require fossil fuels and which pollute the environment, and things are getting worse and worse. Enormous amounts of topsoil erosion, fertile land turning to deserts, the topsoil is disappearing, the amount of global warming gases that will be released, the water pollution that will turn our oceans into deserts. These are things which we will have to deal with in the future.
La produzione intensiva del cibo sta generando grandi problemi per la fertilità dei suoli, per la carenza d'acqua, per la perdita di biodiversità. Tra pochi anni sarà difficile produrre perché distruggendo la fertilità dei suoli, mancando l'acqua, distruggendo la biodiversità, la produzione del cibo sarà sempre più misera e sempre più povera. Questi sono problemi di profonda ingiustizia generazionale, perché distruggendo le risorse noi facciamo una grande ingiustizia per i figli, i nostri figli e i figli dei nostri figli, le generazioni a venire. O cambiamo atteggiamenti o altrimenti siamo destinati a consegnare alle generazioni future un mondo molto ma molto più brutto di quello che abbiamo trovato noi.
We will be eating a lot less animal products in the future than we are now. There's no other way. And the faster we do it, the more we reduce the harmful effects on the rest of the world. It's really not just beyond our imagining, it's really impossible. We simply do not have the resources to do this. If we don't do something now, we're looking at mass extinctions, rising sea levels, spreading disease, spreading poverty, and more desertification. It's going to be very severe globally, but especially severe for those least able to adapt, the poor in the world.
The use of scarce resources, including the very precious resource of water, is governed by economic considerations, like the use of crops like grain and soybeans. We allow the beef producers in particular, I think it's beef that is the most intensive consumer of water as well as the most intensive consumer of grain, we allow the beef producers access to enormous quantities of water, which, at least in some parts of the world, are scarce. It is starting to be noticed that even in countries with significant, normally good water supplies, that the increase in animal production is putting more pressure on that. For example, farmers are pumping up water from underground aquifers where the water has accumulated over thousands of years, and we are now using up this long-term resource in a very short number of years simply in order to produce more beef.
I've seen estimates from as low as 2,000 but as high as over 10,000 gallons of water used to produce 1 pound of beef in this country. And I calculated that I could bathe for months on the amount of water to produce 1 pound of beef in this country. It's completely inefficient. And in a world that is increasingly in need of water to grow food and to cool us, this is a serious, serious waste.
70% of the Earth's fresh water is being used for intensive farming of animals for food. To raise 10 times as many crops you need in order to feed that animal and to water the animal, it's just an incredible amount of water. Probably more water than anything else you use in your entire life. This is water which we rely upon for raising plants to eat as well. And we're depleting our resources, which will cause great trouble in the future. We'll have less water to raise crops in a way which is particularly hard on the most vulnerable populations, on the poorer populations of the world.
Most people use a little bit of water for domestic use, a bit of drinking, a bit for cleaning dishes, a bit for washing clothes, a bit for a bath. And in the third world, this limit is even less because the limit of water use is set by how far a woman can walk for water and how much she can carry on her head. Maybe 1 pitcher, 2 pitchers a day. So water is not being wasted at the level of human beings keeping themselves alive. Water is being wasted when 1 kilogram of meat uses 15,000 liters of water, which would have provided drinking water needs for millions. And the reason these figures are not made available to the public is first because the meat industry has become a very big lobby in the world. And secondly, while the water scarcity grows, there is a water industry waiting to privatize water as a new opportunity.
Water, like grain, is a very similar story of what's happening in the world today, that more and more of it is flowing into these highly inefficient and wasteful uses to produce grain-fed animal products. Today, only about half of the world's grain actually comes to people directly. Half of it that doesn't, a third of it goes into feeds for animals, for livestock, and a lot of it now goes into fuel for automobiles and other vehicles, and a lot of it is used in other ways, so that, again, only half of the world's grain that we produce, which most people need just to survive on, only half of it goes to people directly.
When you shift your production to high input agriculture, high input of water, high input of fossil fuel, high input of chemicals, and by its nature then monocultures, you by its very nature link these monocultures to globalized distribution systems based on waste. 50% of the food of the world is being wasted, directly thrown away, 75% of which then goes into animal feeding. 75% of the grain is being wasted by feeding animals which want grass. That's why cows has 4 stomachs. They weren't designed for eating soya bean. But the issue is not just the fact that the animals themselves are being harmed by this system of factory farming. The point is, the malnourishment of half of humanity is based on the same system that is torturing the animals. The diversion of land and food for animal feed is one of the biggest reasons for hunger of the people on the planet today.
%70 of the world's agricultural land is being used for raising meat rather than for raising plants. We have to grow more than 10 times as many crops to feed the animals we eat than if we just ate those plants directly. All of this could much more efficiently be used to raise plants for people. There's definitely something wrong with the fact that people are starving while we are so wasteful with our food, growing animal products which require far more inputs than the plant products we eat.
Oggi noi viviamo una situazione che per certi aspetti è un paradosso. Produciamo molto, produciamo cibo quotidianamente per 12 miliardi di viventi, sulla Terra siamo 7 miliardi, 1 miliardo soffre di malnutrizione e anche soffre di fame, e quindi tutta questa massa enorme di cibo per il 50% viene buttata via. Il 50% del cibo prodotto a livello mondiale va o nella spazzatura o nel composto. Pensare che la metà del cibo che produciamo viene buttato via è doppiamente vergognoso nel momento in cui la morte per fame è ancora una piaga che attanaglia l'umanità.
Today, there are now 2,800 calories of food produced for every single person on Earth. I mean, that's enough to make most of us chubby, right? So what has happened in this time is that wealth, especially in the last decade or so, wealth has continued to consolidate into fewer hands, so that what we have is greater and greater abundance, and yet we have still extensive hunger. 868 million people is just the most extreme form, those who are living below the calories required to live a sedentary lifestyle for more than a year. So the reality of continuing hunger becomes more and more outrageous as we continue to grow more food, and yet we still have massive hunger. And this is the paradox. But actually, it's not surprising if we understand that we are trapped into a thought system. You see, we humans, we create the world according to the ideas that we hold. Imagine yourself in a room with 50 people with empty bowls. And there you are sitting with a steak. And you realize, wait a minute, the grain that went in to produce this steak, if it were cooked, it could fill all of those empty bowls. What's wrong with this picture? This is completely illogical and inefficient, especially when you look down and you think, and that steak? That's not good for me either, because we are eating so much in the animal world now that it is affecting our health and creating more disease than we want. So it is a lose-lose. It is a lose-lose food system that we are creating. Now, in saying this, I want to really underscore that I am not motivated, and I don't want to try to motivate others by a feeling of guilt for those empty bowls. I'm trying to make this very graphic for you so that we all can see how inefficient and unnecessary this food system is.
Both the meat industry and the water privatization industry are driven by greed. They're driven by taking away what belongs to all. They are based on killing an economy based on compassion and replacing it with an economy based on violence, both to animals as well as human beings. That is why ordinary people are never allowed to know the high costs of an industrial meat industry. The damage to the environment, the climate, the water, the soil, the forests, and the externalities in terms of the damage to the health of the animal and the health of the human beings who will eat that bad meat.
Negli allevamenti animali produciamo della carne con un'alimentazione innaturale, dobbiamo dar da mangiare più proteine perché gli animali crescano in fretta e quindi producano carne più rapidamente, senza neanche tener conto che alle vacche non piace proprio mangiare la soia. Alle vacche piacerebbe mangiare l'erba e nell'erba ci sono le proteine, ci sono nella giusta quantità, ma non permettono una crescita così rapida. Quindi tutto dipende moltissimo da che cosa diamo da mangiare agli animali che alleviamo per mangiarli, dai polli ai pesci e dalle condizioni in cui li alleviamo.
One of the issues in our country and elsewhere is that most of our antibiotics used in this country are used in animal feeding units because they're so crammed together, it's so unhealthy. They use these antibiotics, they use them as growth stimulators, but the downside among many is that then breeds antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria that are really hazardous to human health as well. But it's even worse when you go down to the level of how these animals are treated and the health consequences of it.
One of the biggest problems on factory farms is widespread disease among the animals due to the terrible conditions. The farmers respond not by improving conditions for the animals, but by feeding them massive amounts of antibiotics and other drugs. They're not just fed to them when they're sick, they're fed to them as a matter of course. These billions and billions of animals. The conditions and the diseases not only cause enormous suffering to these animals, it also ends up hurting us. Increasingly, we're seeing penicillin and other drugs used to treat diseases lose their effectiveness because of their overuse. And this ends up coming back to haunt us in terms of diseases that we can't cure and, of course, chemicals that end up in our bodies. Today we're seeing all sorts of increases in diseases and problems like autism, ADHD, cancers. It makes sense if we want to avoid these problems to take the preventative measures necessary and make sure our food is healthy and wholesome and not the product of these corrupted systems.
Over the past 30, 40, 50 years, we've seen increases in autism, ADHD, attention deficit disorder, so-called atopic disease, which is a combination of allergies, asthma. It's hard not to believe that there's something in our environment that's driving this change.
During the last 2 or 3 decades, maybe longer, we have become accustomed to using all kinds of new drugs and new additives to food and even chemicals that are fed to our animals, for example with cows, that end up in milk. And there is some evidence that that kind of product, that kind of milk produced in the modern days with all these chemicals in them, may in fact cause some problems. Problems like asthma and other allergic reactions. We need more research on this, but it's quite clear that by doing that, we now have a product that's quite different than it was some years ago.
Oggi mangiamo in un modo completamente diverso da quello che l'uomo ha sempre mangiato negli ultimi milioni di anni, da quando esiste la specie Homo. E questo cambiamento è stato molto rapido, molto drastico, con l'industrializzazione della produzione del cibo. Mangiamo dei prodotti super raffinati industrialmente, lo zucchero per esempio. Lo zucchero è un prodotto dell'industria chimica, le farine raffinate, la farina 0, la farina 00. Questa roba non era possibile farla quando si macinava il grano a pietra. Mangiamo dei prodotti che l'uomo veramente non ha mai mangiato e che sono delle invenzioni dell'industria alimentare che naturalmente cerca il suo profitto e fa bene, ma che ci sottopone a degli sforzi di adattamento talmente rapidi, talmente importanti che il nostro corpo non è capace di adattarsi sufficientemente e per cui si deteriora progressivamente.
Negli ultimi anni ci siamo trovati a mangiare una serie di alimenti che non sono veri alimenti. Noi abbiamo introdotto nelle nostre tavole cibo raffinato, le farine vecchie, zucchero bianco, zucchero raffinato come se fosse una cosa normale e quindi non ci rendiamo più conto che stiamo mangiando del cibo morto, ovvero un cibo che è stato preso, trattato, devitalizzato, sbiancato, colorato, decolorato. Considerato che oltre ad essere tolte vitamine, tolte minerali eccetera, vengono messe proprio delle sostanze all'interno che sono tossiche per il nostro corpo. Può esserci messo per esempio il talco nel riso, la calce nello zucchero. Sono tutti cibi che non hanno più niente all'interno, quello che sono considerate delle calorie vuote. Quindi cibo che sì fa ingrassare, però non contiene all'interno le sostanze che servono per che cosa? Per il nostro apparato immunitario, per le nostre funzioni vitali generali. Cosa accade accade se noi continuiamo a mangiare un cibo che non contiene queste sostanze? A lungo andare, non trovandole più in se stesso, ce le sottrae dal corpo, quindi dal cervello, dai muscoli, dai nervi, dal sangue, dalle ossa. Diventiamo paradossalmente degli obesi denutriti, con tutte le patologie da denutrizione. Le conseguenze di questa alimentazione è questo enorme aumento di malattie degenerative che sono sempre più evidenti in soggetti sempre più giovani. I sempre più giovani si rivolgono allo specialista per una serie di problematiche che hanno già acquisito da tempo.
The U.S. Surgeon General has come out and said that the children that I speak to in classes today are going to die at a younger age than their parents. This is the first time in history where the mortality rate is going down. Kids will be dying at a younger age. And if you look, diabetes, I go into a classroom, I say, please raise your hand if you know somebody who has diabetes. Every hand shoots up. Raise your hand if you know somebody who has heart disease or suffered a heart attack. Every hand goes up. Raise your hand if you know somebody who knew somebody who has or had cancer. Every hand goes up. I have many students who will come up to me after a presentation and tell me that they have high blood pressure. And I'm thinking, what the hell could you be eating as a sixth grader and you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol? How much stress could you be going through? It's not a coincidence that diabetes, asthma, heart disease, cancer is on the rise, and yet meat, dairy, eggs, and fish is more prevalent in our culture than ever before.
I bambini sono un mercato formidabile per l'industria alimentare. Se notate, gran parte della pubblicità alimentare è proprio rivolta ai bambini. E questo è molto importante anche perché i bambini saranno i malati di domani. Più malati ci sono, più lavoro c'è per la sanità, più aumenta il PIL e diminuisce lo spread. Sapete, è una cosa molto importante nell'economia che ci siano molto malati. Noi che ci occupiamo che le persone non si ammalino, stiamo facendo un danno all'economia, perlomeno all'economia su come viaggia oggi nei nostri paesi. Una cosa interessante oggi è che proprio è appena uscito questo documento dell'Università di Harvard che dice ma stiamo esagerando con la raccomandazione del consumo di latte, no? Non c'è nessuna prova che il latte faccia bene. La ragione per cui il consumo di latte è raccomandato anche nell'alimentazione dei bambini è veramente la conseguenza delle grandi lobby dell'industria del latte, che sono potentissime e che sono capaci di plagiare anche i medici. Oggi la maggior parte dei medici ancora raccomandano a tutti, ma in particolare alle signore che passano l'età della menopausa, di avere un'alimentazione ricca di latte e formaggi, perché il latte e formaggi contengono molto calcio, quindi loro presumono che facciano bene alle ossa. Noi medici siamo mediamente molto ignoranti di alimentazione, è ben vero che il latte e i formaggi sono ricchi di calcio, ma non esiste nessuno studio che abbia dimostrato che fanno bene alle ossa e che riducono le fratture.
It has been shown now for more than 20 years that the countries that consume the most dairy, and therefore the most calcium, for example, and the most animal protein, those are the countries that have the highest risk for osteoporosis. So more dairy, more osteoporosis.
Noi facciamo questi grandi studi in cui seguiamo centinaia di migliaia di persone. Stiamo seguendo oggi in Europa 500.000 persone in 10 paesi europei. Noi seguiamo nel tempo questa popolazione per vedere che cosa succede, per vedere chi muore, chi sopravvive, per vedere chi ha dei problemi, chi si ammala, di che cosa si ammala. Siamo andati a vedere per esempio la relazione fra lo stile alimentare è la frequenza di fratture dell'anca. Ebbene, nel nostro grande studio non si vede assolutamente nessuna relazione tra il consumo di latte e il consumo di formaggi e l'incidenza delle fratture. Il rischio di avere una frattura dell'anca è proporzionale al consumo di carni. Più carni mangiamo, più abbiamo fratture dell'anca. Mentre invece il rischio diminuisce linearmente con il consumo di verdure. Quindi una relazione lineare con il consumo di carne, nessuna relazione con il consumo di latte e formaggi e una relazione protettiva con il consumo di verdure, perché le verdure contengono calcio, contengono magnesio, contengono potassio, che sono tutte cose che fanno bene alle ossa. Ma comunque non abbiamo bisogno di latte, per cui prudenzialmente è bene che nella dieta compaia soltanto saltuariamente. In conclusione, mangiamo troppe proteine e le principali fonti di proteine della nostra alimentazione sono animali, da un lato le carni e dall'altro i latticini, il latte e i formaggi.
What's recommended by the national bodies that make these dietary recommendations is that we consume about 10% of our calories as protein. 10% is enough for all of us to get enough protein. As you consume more protein, you see more Western disease.
The name protein comes from the Greek word proteos, which means of prime importance. Was coined in 1839 in Holland by a Dutch chemist. So ever since 1839, almost 2 centuries now, protein has come to be known as maybe the most important of all nutrients. It was considered to be higher quality, and therefore we should consume as much protein as we possibly can get, which meant, of course, consuming more animal-based foods. And in the beginning, protein was considered to be coming only from animal-based foods. And now we know that plants have plenty of protein. And in fact, if we consume a diet that has a variety of vegetables and fruits and legumes and grains, we can get all the protein we need. It provides about 8, 9, or 10% protein. And when that happens, all the other nutrients that are being consumed with the plants also create very good health. And so we don't really need protein in excess of the 8 or 9 or 10% protein. In fact, the main story to tell here is that when we consume animal-based foods, we tend to increase the consumption of saturated fats. Obviously, we increase the level of cholesterol, we increase the level of animal protein. All these things, plus other things too, work together to create heart disease and other diseases as well. Unfortunately, for people in Western countries, we tend to consume protein somewhere between around 10 to 20 or 25%. And all that extra protein is mostly coming from animal-based foods. But we don't need that protein because it causes problems. Plant-based foods is enough.
Mangiare come stiamo mangiando noi adesso un eccesso di proteine animali come la carne è senz'altro dannoso per la nostra salute, perché non essendo il nostro corpo abituato a mangiare questo eccesso di carne come stiamo facendo adesso, la stiamo mangiando in maniera sconsiderata un po' tutti i giorni sotto forma anche di trasformati della carne, può avere delle conseguenze molto importanti sulla nostra salute, perché ci abbassa le difese immunitarie. Il nostro corpo non è progettato per mangiare tutta quella carne, quindi le nostre difese si abbassano e aprono la strada a numerose patologie.
The China study is the name of the book that I wrote with my son, and it's a summary in many ways of the research that I did over the last 40 or more years. And it documents the kind of work that we did in the laboratory, understanding how nutrients work, and especially how they work in the formation of cancer. And what we learned there was that we could actually use nutrition to basically turn on and turn off the development of cancer. Then in the latter part of the book, we talk about the actual study that we did in China of people. And to see if, in fact, what we are seeing in human situations was similar to what we were seeing in the laboratory. And that was very exciting when we learned about what food, and specifically nutrients within the foods, can really do. The first thing that we saw was the ability of protein. When fed at levels above the amounts that we need, especially when it is animal-based protein, we were able to turn on cancer. If we decrease the consumption of animal-based protein in these experiments, we could turn off cancer. We give it back again, we could turn it on. Or, in contrast, if we take the animal protein and substitute plant protein for it, then we can also essentially turn off the cancer. And so simply turning cancer on and off was a very exciting idea because it tended to change the direction of my thinking.
Cancer is probably the most dreaded diagnosis, and once you hear the words "you have cancer," it's probably the most frightening experience that anybody can have in their life. Depending on the cancer, there are different outcomes in terms of diet. Some cancers are likely to respond more favorably to lifestyle change. For example, colon cancer, those people who have a better diet have better outcomes. Now, it would be silly, though, to assume that a diet is a panacea of perfect health and cancer reversal in every case. Cancer is a tough one. There's still a lot of research to be done, but there are certain types of cancer that respond favorably, even once you're diagnosed, that respond favorably to diet. Basically, you just need to eat low on the food chain, eat natural foods. The only way you're not going to get enough protein is if you eat very highly refined foods. Whole grains have protein, vegetables have protein, all plants have protein. You don't need to count the calories, you just need to eat lower on the food chain.
Quindi tutto rientra in un quadro generale che poi è la raccomandazione centrale del Fondo Mondiale per la Prevenzione del Cancro, che è questa agenzia che ha finanziato questo enorme lavoro di revisione di tutti gli studi scientifici su alimentazione e tumori e che ha dato delle raccomandazioni. E la raccomandazione centrale è: basate la vostra alimentazione quotidiana prevalentemente su cibo di provenienza vegetale e non industrialmente raffinato, con un'ampia varietà, la varietà è molto importante, di cereali integrali, di legumi, tutti i giorni, di verdure e di frutta. C'è poi la raccomandazione di limitare il consumo dei cibi ad alta densità calorica, cioè i cibi troppo ricchi di grassi e di zucchero. Sono praticamente tutti i cibi che sono raccomandati in televisione, ed evitare il consumo di bevande zuccherate. Notate la differenza fra limitare ed evitare. E fare tutti i giorni attività fisica, almeno mezz'ora al giorno di una camminata con un passo veloce e mantenersi snelli. Mantenersi snelli per tutta la vita e se non si è più snelli, tornare snelli, cosa che è possibile.
One of the most exciting areas of this entire lifestyle, health, diet, disease paradigm that we're trying to shift is that advanced metabolic disease can be reversed. When I say metabolic disease, I mean diabetes, I mean obesity, I mean coronary artery disease, the most common killer of Americans.
One of the observations that we've made during the last 2 or 3 decades is that, in fact, heart disease in advanced stages in people can actually be reversed by switching the diet from an animal-based diet over to a plant-based diet. And then there's another colleague of mine who also does the same thing with diabetes. And collectively, between all of us, we have been able to show that these serious diseases can be stopped and even reversed through nutritional means. And we actually can reverse these diseases using the same kind of diet. That is a diet that's basically made up of whole plant-based foods, that is much lower in protein than what we're accustomed to, lower in fat, and much higher in the antioxidants and dietary fiber. And what we're now learning, when we do it that way, we can not only prevent future diseases, we can actually reverse, in many cases, these same diseases that are already present. It's a very exciting time.
Il cambiamento dell'alimentazione ci permette di avere dei riscontri sulla nostra salute e prevenire e curare patologie degenerative di vario tipo, anche nei termini di prevenzione. Cose come, a volte non ci pensiamo, la carie, l'obesità, il diabete, le malattie cardiovascolari, anche l'Alzheimer, le malattie che sono della nostra epoca, trovano tutte giovamento facendo una rivoluzione positiva nel nostro modo di mangiare.
You can take someone who heart disease is so advanced that they've been told, as a physician, you've been told there's nothing more we can do for you with our drugs and procedures. Prepare to die. Put them on a diet, a plant-based diet. You can use medications to supplement that as well, and you can reverse their disease. And people who thought maybe they had 1 year left to live are now living, in some studies, 17, 18, 19 years after being sent home to die.
È molto ben documentato che con uno stile di vita attivo e con un'alimentazione naturale, cioè che mangia i cibi naturali e non i cibi trasformati dall'industria, si può prevenire la grande maggioranza dei casi di ipertensione, la grande maggioranza dei casi di diabete, la grande maggioranza delle coronaropatie e anche una buona frazione di tumori maligni. Con tutta probabilità si possono prevenire le demenze senili e ci si potrebbe consentire di giungere a morire sani in età anziana. Questo concetto di morire sani è un concetto che disturba un po', disturba anche un po' i medici. Una volta ne parlavo in un convegno ai miei colleghi e mi dicevano: ma no, ma come morire sani? Si muore di malattia, no? Ebbene no, non è necessario morire di malattia. Possiamo benissimo diventare vecchi e poi spegnersi in salute. E se non credete a me, credete al grande nutrizionista che nel 6° giorno della creazione ha detto ad Adamo ed Eva: vi do le piante con tutti i loro semi perché siano il vostro cibo.
People just don't know the information. They're not taught about nutrition. There are many, many reasons for this. It's a complicated system. So people are not taught this information because there are massive industries that exist to sell their products, and their products tend to be unhealthy. Once people buy those unhealthy products, they end up going to the doctors, and the doctors are reacting to illnesses that come up at the end of disease. And at the end of disease, we end up giving people pills and procedures, and there's a whole new industry around that too. So it's not just industry influence, but clearly there's a whole industry system set up to propagate both bad diet and then a system of care that does not value prevention or wellness. So there's many points along the line, but at no point is there a vested interest in educating people about living a healthy lifestyle, staying away from the doctor, and eating simple plant-based foods.
There is definitely a conspiracy for first making human beings believe that the amazing diversity of plants that are available to us are not good enough as food, that without meat you have a deficient diet. And we in India, who are largely vegetarians, sense this all the time. Meat, you can't live without meat, you can't live without meat. And meat consumption was made an indicator of progress. How much meat a society eats was made to look like a developed society, so the fact that the Americans eat steaks that big was made to look like the Americans have the best diet. We've seen what it's done to them. We've seen the obesity epidemic. We've seen the ill health. Hiding all this is part of the conspiracy of forcing human beings into a meat-dependent diet. So every cost has to be hidden, because only when people don't know the costs will they eat a piece of meat thinking they're doing very well.
This myth that you need to eat meat to get protein, that you need to drink cow's milk to get strong bones. This is just all something that the dairy industry and the meat industry have done in a great marketing job to convince people that they need to consume their product. And it's simply a money issue. There's no health involved in this. To give you an example, McDonald's spends more money every 12 hours promoting fast food. Every 12 hours they spend the same amount of money that the National Institutes of Health spends every year to promote fruits and vegetables. So again, this shows you just how much of influence they have in conditioning people to consume their product. And it's complete BS.
I want to say one more thing that we're now discovering, that a heavy fatty food diet in the animal world that so many people have been hooked on is actually addictive. They've done study on rats that show when they eat this junk food diet, heavy fat, heavy processed foods, that actually they will endure electric shock to keep eating it. I think we need to be more courageous to name this system that isn't working for us. Do you realize we've made food into a health hazard? In the United States, 4 out of 6 of our leading diseases, they are food related. So we all have a stake, not to make an intentional pun, but we have something very much at risk here, whether we are comfortable and have enough to buy food or we don't. And I haven't even begun to talk about the misery of the animals that are all packed together so tightly. So from every angle, whether we're talking about its efficiency in feeding people, its fairness in access to food, this system is not working.
Factory farming, where you confine thousands of animals to these enormous warehouses miles long, These animals are confined in very small spaces. There's no real room for them to move. They can't do any of their natural instincts. Pigs have their teeth removed. They're put into a tank of hot water to remove their hair, but they're still fully conscious as this is happening. They have their bodies mutilated. Birds are debeaked. Cows are dehorned. They're branded. They have their tails docked off. They're castrated without any painkillers. So many of these animals are having their throats slit while still fully conscious. Birds are shackled by their legs, still fully conscious. They have a blade that cuts into their neck and they bleed to death. The instruments of death are conveyor belts, the same thing that you would see on a line of cars. But these animals aren't cars. They're living, feeling, breathing creatures, sentient beings that have their legs hung, strung up. Every second in the United States, 300 animals are killed, just like that. So 300, 600, 900, 1,200. This process happens every day, 24/7, every second of every hour. And these are all things that are acceptable and that are not only just common, but legal within these industries. It's a violation of their right. No other creature on this planet would ever be able to do what we do to these animals. We view violence, violence, whether it's directed at other humans or non-human beings, as just something that's not appropriate, that's not something that, as a human race, we should be striving for. But we are then also taught to consume animal products that are the direct result of violence, of its death. These animals don't want to die. They share the same feelings as our cats and dogs. The only difference is that we feel differently about them.
I use the term speciesism to make the parallel with racism, refer to an attitude of prejudice against beings because they are not members of a particular species, usually, of course, because they are not members of our species, Homo sapien. Nowadays, we all accept that it's wrong to give less consideration to somebody because they are not of your race, because they're a different race. That's not a reason for saying that we ought not to be concerned with their interests or their pain or suffering. And in the same way, I think, it is not a reason to refuse to take any concern for the suffering of a being of another species that it's not a member of our species. For example, the animals that we use for food production, and particularly in factory farming, are mammals and birds. And they do have many of the same needs that we do. For example, because cows are mammals, they suffer when they are separated from their newborn calf. In fact, every dairy farmer knows that when you take a calf away from her mother, the calf and the mother will both suffer. Sometimes the cow will call out for the calf for a very long time. She still remembered the fact that her calf was taken and is still calling for her calf at that time, at that point. And I'm sure any human mother who's been forcibly separated from her child would understand that reaction of the cow.
We're conditioned at a very young age to perceive certain animals as food and certain animals as pets. In the US, you look at a dog and a cat and you're taught to pet that animal. You look at cows, pigs, and chickens and you're taught, well, those are our food. When you take a child, put a baby in a crib, put on the right side a baby chick, put on the left side a strawberry, which one do you think the baby's going to try to play with and which one do you think the baby's going to try to eat? Most likely the baby will try to play with the thing that's moving, in this case a baby chick, and try to pick up the thing that's not moving, in this case a strawberry, and try to put it into his or her mouth. In reality, as a child, we have an instinct for compassion, and that's something that we should be encouraging, not something that we should try to suppress. When I give presentations in high schools and colleges, I like to give analogies on how this conditioning actually occurs. And when I'm successful and a child goes home and tells their parent that they no longer want to consume this violence, they no longer want to consume meat, the parent, because they've been so conditioned, immediately has a knee-jerk reaction, doesn't talk to their child about why they might want to, pursue this lifestyle, and instead contacts the principal, who then contacts the teacher, who tells me never to come back again. So when I'm successful, I end up being kicked out of a school. All the child is doing is expressing that innate compassion and, being healthy. Unfortunately, in our culture, compassion and health is seen as something extreme. But killing 10 billion cows, pigs, chickens, and turkeys for food, well, that's considered healthy and normal.
Human beings are feeling trapped in this vicious cycle of violence. Violence to the earth, violence to the animals, violence to our bodies because of a totally non-sustainable diet. But we can break out of this sense of impotence because all of us eat. And eating can be an ethical and conscious choice based on the awareness that we are part of an earth family, that we are part of one earth citizenship, where the cows and the human beings and the grass and the forests are part of one extended community. That shift in consciousness is the most powerful shift we can make in our times. And from that flows an awareness of how to eat consciously. And one of those major shifts will have to be in our relationship to animals, as well as in our idea of what is good eating, what is a healthy and good diet. That will involve a shift to a more plant-based diet so that the animals are not tortured. Human beings have a more balanced diet because we too are meant to eat far more plants and far more fiber than a meat diet allows. And most importantly, we will have to recognize that food connects us to the earth. Food cannot be the reason for a war against the earth and a war against animals.
I became a vegetarian when I first learnt about the suffering of animals in factory farm production. And I thought, I do not want to be part of this vast industrial process that inflicts so much pain and suffering on non-human animals. All it really needs to continue is that people like me continue to buy its products. And if there are consumers who will buy its products, then there is an economic basis for this industry existing, and treating animals merely as things to be turned into meat or eggs or milk. So what I'm looking forward to is a day when we are able to live in a greater degree of harmony with animals, when we're able really honestly to look them in the face and say, I am not exploiting you, I am doing my best to respect your interests and to allow you to have the kind of life that is suited to your needs and your species, just as I wish to have the kind of life that is suited to my needs and my species.
It's within our power to actually change this, to change the culture that we live in. You know, every tradition that we've had, traditions are meant to be broken. We evolve as a culture, and we are constantly evolving. So do our traditions, and so does our way of thinking. So it's up to the consumer to make the right choice. I want people to be fed up. I want people to be angry at these industries. I mean, why would anybody want to support and give their money to an industry that doesn't care at all about us, doesn't care about the animals, and doesn't care about the health of this planet? I think when people become aware, they open up their eyes to the absurdity, to the violence, and to the health problems that are occurring right now in our culture, then people will make that change. Choosing to participate in a system that is violent, that is not healthy, that's not necessary, is something that we have a choice. And there's no sacrifice. The sacrifice is when you consume animal products because you are sacrificing the animal's life, your health, and the health of this planet. This is the easiest thing that you could possibly do to actually make a direct impact on the innocent lives of others, as well as, to your benefit.
È importante ritornare a esercitare il controllo, specialmente sulle produzioni animali, garantendo da un lato il benessere animale, che non è cosa di poco conto, anzi è molto importante, e dall'altro il fatto che l'uso della terra per la produzione di carne non possa essere così concentrata. Bisogna moderare la produzione intensiva e la monocultura, rispettare la terra madre e quindi tornare a un rapporto produttivo con meno impatto ambientale. Noi dobbiamo assolutamente cambiare i nostri stili di consumo alimentare se non vogliamo marciare a passi forzati verso l'estinzione della specie.
We get so scared, we distrust ourselves. We're told that there is lack of goodness in us, that we can't come together to make common sense solutions for the planet. No. And so what happens is that we give over our fate, our decision making to others, and increasingly to a mythological kind of magical notion of a market that works on its own. And if we just turn over our fate to it, that things will turn out all right. And that's why I'm pursuing these questions around food, because they unlock and they allow us to see how a market concentrates wealth, that this is just an invention in our minds, that we can create markets that are fair and open and truly competitive in which we all can eat. If we were moving more into a plant-centered diet, I call it a planet-centered diet as well, that it is better for our bodies, better for the earth and for all of us. It is a sense of, I want power. I want a voice. I want to feel like what I'm doing matters. And I think most people do. So I want to encourage all of us, and I do this on a daily basis, is not to be motivated by guilt, but by our curiosity and our desire to live well in communities where everyone is living well. Because at some level we all know that we can't really feel secure, happy, safe, and creative if, in fact, there are 868 million people in dire state of hunger in the world. No, it's not going to be possible.
The food we eat is the most powerful thing we do to impact the planet. It's incredibly empowering because each of us can make a difference every meal, a difference with impacts global in scope. You don't have to go out and buy a new car. You don't have to change your power plant to a different kind of power. Simply by promoting healthy, plant-based products, we're not just making people healthier, but we're taking a big bite out of problems that are global in scope. We can really make a huge difference for the planet simply by changing what we're eating. If we simply switch towards plant products, the amount of extra food we could grow would be astounding. We could feed the world many times over, easily. So many problems with malnutrition would be so much easier to solve when such plant food is plentiful.
Cambio deciso di filosofia del consumo alimentare può risolvere i grandi problemi che il pianeta ha. Ridurre lo spreco da un lato e sostenere l'agricoltura locale del territorio come soluzione di nuova economia, non c'è dubbio che genererà le condizioni per un sistema alimentare più giusto, più rispettoso dell'ambiente, e io dico anche più buono. Quindi rispettare il consumo del cibo, la morigeratezza, la diversificazione e garantire che i 2 pasti, il mezzogiorno e della sera, vengano garantiti a tutti e che non sia privilegio solo di una parte dell'umanità.
The way you produce food is linked to the way you distribute it. If you grow food sustainably, ecologically, then it is always linked to local markets. It is always linked to zero waste. It is always linked to better nutrition. So both the children and the animals would be liberated by redesigning the food system in production and redesigning it, therefore, also in distribution.
We have to discover our power. And what great seers told us from all time, but now scientists are telling us that in reality, that we are not in this separate world where we're merely competitors fighting it out, that actually we live in a totally connected world that is changing moment to moment. It's characterized by connection and continuous change in which we are moment to moment creating our reality. And so we each have influence that we didn't realize we have under an old worldview. So as we see our world, I think of it through the eco-mind, the ecological, thinking like an ecosystem. We realize that we are all influencers and that we all have power. And so every time I choose a plant-centered diet instead of a meat, a grain-fed meat polluting diet, I feel like, I'm expressing my power. I'm not a victim. I'm acting based on what I know is best for us and best for the earth. This we can do. We are not victims. We can change our minds to change the world.